Welcome to the Priority Lane podcast, the show where we explore the power of prioritizing and how it can be used to achieve real growth by doing less but doing it better. I'm your host, Nigel Catt, and each episode I sit down with successful people to uncover how they filter out the noise and focus on what really matters. Today, I'm joined by Georgios Mihos, an angel investor, co-founder, CEO and director, and peak performance wealth coach and mentor. Georgios is a husband of 34 years and a proud father of two. Those roles sit at the centre of how he thinks about wealth, responsibility, and long-term legacy. Professionally, Georgios brings more than 27 years as a full-time investor and entrepreneur with experience spanning property, health technology, capital engagement, and strategic commercialization. He currently serves on the board of 5 companies while holding CEO and director roles, driving global vision, partnerships, and investor strategy. He's widely known for his disciplined, system-based approach to opportunity, focusing on execution, governance, and risk reduction rather than hype. That thinking led him to develop the POW, or Pillars of Wealth framework, a commercial readiness test used to assess whether ideas, products, or services are truly ready for capital, scale, and long-term success. He's also the founder of Wealth Coaching Institute, where he works with founders, investors, and boards around disciplined decision-making and long-term wealth creation. Today, Georgios will share how he evaluates opportunity, why most ideas fail, and how founders and investors can make better decisions before time, money, and reputations are put on the line. How are you today, Georgios?
Yeah, I'm great, Nigel. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for the time to add value.
No problems at all. No problems at all. Now, just reading that intro there, you keep yourself quite busy. Let me just recap. So, husband of 34 years, proud father of two, plus you sit on the board of 5 companies. How do you manage all of that? How do you manage your work-life balance?
Yeah, look, that's a question that I challenge people on a daily basis, and as you get to intimately connect with myself, you'll understand the power of words. And I tend to get people to refocus from thinking they're being busy to how can you be productive. So that's the
Right.
first golden nugget I will share with people. How can you be productive as opposed to being busy? I mean, like myself, Nigel, I think you're 94 years old now by memory or something like that. I'm just joking, right? But what I'm alluding to there is that we've had about three to 4 decades exposure in the marketplace. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
sure we see a lot of people in business every day. They're very busyness. And as we know, being busy doesn't generally lead to being productive. Yeah. So the first
Yeah.
thing I would challenge everybody or share with everybody is how can you be productive as opposed to being busy? It's number one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have some, successful people. I was the youngest player to play Premier League real football in Victoria when I was
Oh.
growing up. I played National League when I was 17. So always
Oh.
played it. I was always exposed at the elite level. And I probably didn't appreciate back then what I know now is at any elite level, whether it's business, academia, sports, anything, you got to do something very different to the masses. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? And that's what tends to differentiate you from most people. And one thing I noticed getting around successful, wealthy people religiously is they tend to behave very, very differently. Okay. And the three key drivers around that is attitude, desire, and coachability. Right. That's something which I've really implemented into my own coaching regime. And fundamentally, Nigel, I'll challenge you and I'll challenge anybody who's fortunate enough to be able to hear this is who do we deal with the most on a regular basis? We deal with ourselves, don't we? Who do we
Yep.
talk to the most every day? We talk to ourselves, don't we? You know,
Yep. Can't get
and
away
most
from ourselves.
well, no, particularly when you're looking in the mirror. However, suffice to say, because we tend to talk to ourselves the most every day, most people's internal dialogue doesn't serve them in the best possible way. So I'll give you three quick examples. Most people tend to have what I call sabotaging dialogue. They'll say things like, I can't, oh, should have done this, could have done that. So some of the golden nuggets I get people to move from being busy to productive is substitute the I can't internal dialogue to how can I. first of all.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So, how
Okay.
can I be productive? How can I make this happen? Because guess who is our number one supporter in the world?
Guess it'll be us.
Our brain. You're right, Nigel.
Mm.
Our brain loves us unconditionally to
Mm.
the extent that it does not care, doesn't question what we say to ourselves.
Mm.
Okay. All it
Mm.
wants to do, it wants to prove us right. So whatever we say to ourselves, it says, okay, I'm now going to go to work for you, Nigel. I'm going to go to work for you, Georgios. So when you say, oh, I can't, it then goes out there and seeks evidence why you can't. So for most people, what happens, you start repeating that self-fulfilling prophecy while you can't. Does that make sense?
Makes absolute sense. And look, I've seen a couple of quotes over the years that relate to this. One was it Einstein? Can't remember. Was whether you think you can or you
Correct.
can't, you are right.
You're right. Absolutely right. So I say to people, when you look at the word right, it starts with R, doesn't it? Right?
Yep.
And my challenge to people is, how do you go from being busy to productive? You want to be rich or right. Guess where the masses play at? The masses tend to play on the right side of the equation, whereas the
Right.
select few tend to play like ourselves on the rich side of the equation. And what that
Yep.
means is we tend to be focused on results, not opinions.
Hmm.
That changed my life dramatically, Nigel. When I understood if I can get around people that have got better results than me, that uplifts me also. Does that make sense? Right?
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
it's shifting from being busy to productive. It's shifting from being right to rich, right? And part
Hmm.
of that, because our communication model and fundamentally, what we're talking about today, Nigel, when you break it down, it's all about communication, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
Whether
Yep.
we're communicating one on one like you and I are now, whether we're communicating to a group of people, or whether we communicate to the most important person in our world, which tends to be ourselves, it's all about communication. And 93% of the communication model is what they call nonverbal, and
Hmm.
7% is what they call verbal. So I'll give you an example, Nigel. Let's say you're walking towards me.
Yep.
Okay, you're coming towards me, and I say, "Hey, Nige, geez, you're looking pretty good today," and I'm pretty flat on a tone and looking down. Would you believe that I'm being sincere and genuine when I make that statement?
No. No.
More likely not. Why? Because my non-verbal and verbal are not matching. Whereas if you're coming towards me and I look at you, I make eye contact, I've got positive, healthy energy. Go, geez, Nigel, you're looking pretty good today. You think it, yes.
Mhm.
Now, here's the key. How do you go from being busy to productive? When your non-verbal and verbal are congruent, you create momentum. When your non-verbal and verbal are not congruent, people will always listen to your non-verbal. Very, very important. It's not because 93% will always outweigh the 7%. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Excuse me.
Okay. Okay. So when your non-verbal and verbal are congruent, you're on the right track. You're heading
Correct.
places. Okay. Okay.
Correct.
'Cause, another thing I remember, I saw a quote somewhere that the body won't go where the mind doesn't tell it to.
Well, I got a classic saying around that. You can never steer a parked car.
Yes. Yes.
Makes
Yeah.
sense? So you could have the best car in the world, Maserati, Porsche, Ferrari, whatever you want. You could be Mr. Beam and have a Formula One car, but if that car is parked, doesn't matter. You can't steer it, can you? Right?
Well, no.
So
No.
going back to your original question, how do I manage my time? Because fundamentally, we all have the magic 86,400 seconds every day.
Hmm.
And I was challenged about 27 years ago when I was asked, in actual fact, let me go back and what really changed my life. Do you want to know what that compelling moment what changed my life, Nigel?
Hmm.
I went from managing 400 corporate staff, in the matrix, on the treadmill, working 70, 80, 90 hours a week, income capped, no leveraged income, I'll never get paid in the future for the effort I was doing at the time. And I remember hearing this question. Actual fact, I'd love to give this gift to everybody. Is that okay? This
Yeah.
question changed my life.
Absolutely.
I remember hearing this question. If the quality of your life will be determined by the quality of the questions you ask yourself.
Oh. Okay.
Yourself.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, yep,
So I remember, because I never used to enjoy public transport back then. So I used to drive to the CBD every day and, I'd see the same person trying to, rush across the road to get the tram and the same guy putting on his tie and spilling the coffee and the same lady trying to put on the makeup. I remember, for about 6, 7 weeks, I kept saying to myself, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? What am I doing here? And you alluded to this earlier, Nigel. The definition of insanity is behaving the same way, expecting a different outcome.
yep.
Well, I was asking the same question, thinking I was gonna get a better outcome. Well, I'm not. I was just repeating it, right? What am I doing here? And I didn't know. And then I remembered, aha, that what I call bullfo moment, BFO, blinding flash of the obvious. Okay, if the quality of your life is determined by the quality of questions you ask yourself, how could I ask a better question? And this question changed my life. I said, okay, what am I passionate about? And it was like a lightning just hit me. Bang. And I remembered my left eye looking in the rearview mirror, and I said, "Oh, you know what I'm passionate about? I'm passionate about changing people's lives." And then remember non-verbal verbal, the exercise of the non-verbal voice kicked in, right?
Yep.
Okay, my internal dialogue. Well, how can you honestly change other people's lives when you haven't changed your own? And I said, "That's it. I don't know how, who, what, when, but I made a decision that day." And I talk about when you make a purposeful decision, mountains are moved. Okay, mountains have moved. I made a decision that day I was gonna go to find out how, what, who, when, why. Why does a select few people in our world create real wealth? And
Yep.
most people just work hard 30, 40, 50 years. Because again, these not are my stats. People can look at their stats. 97.3% chance of people after working 40, 50 years tend to retire or die broke. They're the statistics. So I said to myself, all right, so how do I move from 97.2.7? Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
And
Yep,
guess
yep.
what I found out, Nigel? I found out that, granted, sometimes there's an exception to the rule. There might be somebody that gets born in a billionaire family, but most people are not like that, correct? Right?
Correct. Yep, yep.
Here's the shift. Here's how I went from being busy to productive, from wanting to be right to becoming richer, right? Is
Mhm.
identify the universe does not discriminate when it comes to wealth and success. What I identified, the people that were on the 2.7% side of the equation consistently behave very differently to the other side of the equation. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And what I also did, I didn't understand at the time, I eliminated some of the limiting beliefs that I had. For instance, I grew up, well, I didn't have enough capital, therefore, how could I create wealth? You know,
Yep,
I
yep.
came from a blue chip collar type of family upbringing. My parents made me grateful, best parents in the world, but they only knew so much. They knew how, they instilled in us, you got to work hard, you got to work hard, you got to work hard. Well, when I
Yep.
moved from 97.3 to 2.7, I started to learn, yes, you have to work hard, but how do you create leverage?
Yes.
Right? How do
Yes.
you go from being busy to priority lane, productive lane? I love that.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And what I realized was the universe does not care about your age, your sex, your color, your creed, your cultural background, your appearance, your experience. Yeah, let's give the audience a test. Are there people wealthier than you who are older or younger? The answer is yes, correct?
Yes.
Therefore,
Yes.
it's got nothing to do
Absolutely.
with age. Are there
Yep.
people shorter or taller than you? Are there people darker or lighter than you? Are there people, heavier or not as heavy as you? You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
Are there people, maybe not as good looking as you or, better looking than you? Now, I know in my case it's a bit hard. I appreciate that, Nigel. Thank you. Right. Okay. But what I realized going through this, identifying this, becoming aware, it started to take away my limiting beliefs, my excuses why I couldn't succeed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So you're getting your brain, your biggest supporter. You're getting rid of the barriers, and you go. There's no reason why I can't do this.
Correct. And this is how I found how to fast track it. How can we leverage our 86,400 seconds in a day? Because everybody has the same 86,400 seconds in a day. It's a simple
Yep.
formula. It's 24 hours in a day, there's 60 minutes in an hour, and there's 60 seconds in a minute.
Yep.
So it's a simple formula. That's how you get 80, 60, and 400. How do we leverage it? How do we get that to become our best friend? Because to be brutally honest, and it's the only way to be in life, it's funny, people say to me, "Can I be honest?" And I look at them and I go, "Does that mean you haven't been honest so far?" Right? Okay. To be brutally honest, you
Mm,
know, they talk about life is not a dress rehearsal. Well, depending on your beliefs, it might be, but let's put that aside, right?
yep.
The most important asset I've come to appreciate is time, right? Is time, because time is so priceless. Yeah. So how do you
Yep.
use time effectively? How do you, and the thing is you got to learn how to master yourself. That's what I've come to appreciate. And that's what I empower people. How do you master yourself? So look, I wasn't sort of probably prepared for this question. And I spent a whole day in this and I'll go really deep. But I'll share these golden nuggets. The thing I do on a Sunday night, which works well for me, Nigel, is
Hmm.
I identify my roles. How do you manage yourself? You've got to identify your roles. So, what are some of the roles that I have? I'm a husband,
Yep.
I'm a father, I'm an uncle, I'm a pet owner. I love my dog Harvey, right? I'm a pet owner.
Yeah.
I'm me. I'm a CEO. I'm on the board. I'm a colleague. Yeah. So what I tend to do every Sunday night, I will identify what are the 6 to 9 key roles I want to focus for that week.
Okay.
Okay. Then I identify what are 4 to 6 outcomes that I want to achieve that week for those roles. So for instance, a husband might be, you know what? I want to spend some quality time with my wife. Because what I learned, interestingly enough, wealthy people allocate time to outcomes, even to their partners. And one thing that my wife and I have started to re-engage again, we used to do this religiously for about 5 years, is we used to allocate one night a week just for us. And I'll tell you, that made a significant difference to our relationship and our business because the more in tune I was with my partner, the less unproductive time I had to deal with other stuff. Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah, it
And the
does.
other benefit also, Nigel, what I found was this. I found by allocating that time, we could have real deep discussions because who do we talk to the most? Again, ourselves. I used to say stuff to myself, I told my partner. But because I was saying it to myself, I actually thought I told my partner when I hadn't told her. Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
again,
I've yeah, done that myself.
so you can relate, yeah? So
Yeah,
Sunday
yeah.
nights, I manage my time on a weekly basis. Sure, I have 3-month goals and 6-month goals and 12-month outcomes. And once a year, I'll sit down and assess my last 12 months and I'll refocus what I want to over the next 12 months. And then you've got to test, measure, and monitor, right? So I'll give you a
Yep.
real example here. Another thing I identified is successful people use real data, real information. So I was coaching somebody recently, they were getting very frustrated in their communication with their life partner because they were
Mhm.
having difference of opinions about what was happening in their lives. And I said to them, "Well, how do you know what your version is more true than your partner's version?" He says,
Yep.
"Oh, well, to me it is." I said, "Yeah, because it's perception versus perspective. You've got
Yep.
perception, the other person has perspective, and vice versa." I said, "I'll give you a challenge. For the next month, document the 2 activities that you guys have got conflict, okay? Document. Don't tell your partner, document." So one of the conflict I had is their partner kept complaining, "All I do is I cook every week." And he says, "Well, I know we don't because we go out a lot." I said, "Well, where's the data? How do you prove it?" Correct? So for
Yeah,
the
yep.
next month, he documented how many times they stay home, who cooked, when they took takeaway, when they went out. And the first 18 days, the partner was shocked that she only cooked 4 of the 18 days. But in her perception, all she was doing was cooking. Does that
Mm.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah.
And the more you say to yourself, the more you think it's a reality. And he
Perception
was
becomes
saying, "You're
reality.
right." Make sense? So what he
Yep.
did, instead of having this verbal disagreement, he produced data. Because here you go, I've documented it. On this day we did this, and this day you cooked it. And she went, "Wow, what? Seriously?" So do you think her attitude changed?
Yes.
That's how you deal with
Mhm.
things, with real data, real information. Warren Buffett and Charles Munger, your audience may have heard of. I know most people have heard of Warren Buffett. I reckon
Mhm.
about 20% of people have heard of Charles Munger when asked the question. Basically, partners in Berkshire Hathaway for
Oh,
decades.
okay.
Yeah, decades. Charles Munger, Berkshire Hathaway. And they've all been interviewed. And the journalist said to them, "How have you two been able to be so successful consistently? Like 24% returns every year for the last 38 years or something like that, right?
Mm.
That's a pretty
Yeah.
good return. Would you agree, Nigel?
Oh,
To do that
absolutely. Yep.
consistently compared to what the masses get for their money, right? We can talk about that
Yep.
another day, right? And Charles Munger looked at Warren and he said, "It's simple." And they said, "How?" He says, "We under promise, low expectations." He goes, "What?" "Well, you've been returning your investors 24% year in, year out for 38 years." He said, "If you want us to look at conflict in any relationship, whether it's partner to partner, husband to wife, wife to husband, whether it's parents, children, siblings, friends, colleagues, it's because the expectations are different. That's the only time there's friction." Now, all of this, Nigel, I can encompass in my chapter that I'm launching, called about signal versus noise.
Right.
You look at people like the Warren Buffetts of the world, the Charles Mungers of the world. I love looking at these people. The Elon Musks of the world, the Steve Jobs of the world. You know, these some people think they're ruthless. They're ruthless. You know what I've learned? They're not ruthless. They're actually focused. There's a difference. Most people are heavily on the noise side of the equation.
Mhm.
Peak performers are on the signal side of the equation. Okay.
Right.
So here's a
Yep.
challenge for the audience. And I haven't met too many people who have taken this up. I was asked this question 27 years ago, and it was a huge challenge. I was challenged, or I was asked, if you could ignore everything for 12 months, your family, social occasions, all this stuff, and you could be totally focused for 12 months on your wealth side of the equation, knowing that in 12 months' time you'll set up you and your family for the next 8, 10 generations. Would you be totally focused on doing that? And that's a big challenge for most people because it means you're giving up
Yeah,
weddings,
it is.
birthdays, and what if somebody dies? So, what we influence, and we won't cover that today because of time, but all that comes down to what Warren and Charles are talking about expectations. And what's inspired around that is your values. Your values influence your behavior. So, again, can I give a real example
Yep,
in a,
yep,
in a relationship? So, you could have a husband and wife or life partners, and one of them values wealth, financial wealth. And it's in their top three priority of values. And the
yep,
other one could be more a socializer, likes to, travel, likes the five-star lifestyle. If you got two people in those with different values, you're going to have conflict because one wants to invest, the other one wants to consume. Can you see that?
yep, yep, yep.
Right?
Like,
See
say, accounts and marketing.
that? In a business, yeah, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
fair enough, fair enough. Or, yeah, somebody that's more social focused as opposed to
Mhm.
somebody's more about the numbers, right? We're
Yeah.
using a business sense. But again, how do I manage my time? Is identify my roles for the week, identify the outcomes for the week, and gotta understand about in inspiring and empowering other people in your company. They
Yeah.
gotta make mistakes. Sometimes the best learning is in making mistakes.
No.
It's the hardest learning, but it's making mistakes.
And look, thank you for those pearls of wisdom. What you were talking about there is essentially what the podcast is about, how to prioritize, and how to focus on what really matters as opposed to being distracted by the noise.
Correct.
Now, before we dive into the business side of things, we're going to get into our historical event. As you know, each episode, we delve into a quirky historical fact of the month we're in, which happens to be January. And today we're going back 100 years, 100 years to, where are we? January 26, 1926.
Oh,
Scottish
wow.
investor John Logie Baird gave the first public demonstration of his electromechanical televisor to almost 50 scientists in the attic of his London workshop. The first images were of a ventriloquist dummy like Stooky Bill. Stooky never went on to become famous. Later, he used 20-year-old William Tainton, an office boy downstairs, to sit for him. There were wires all over the place. He used cardboard discs with bicycle lenses, lamps, scrap wood, biscuit tins, an old tea chest filled with an old engine and old batteries to make discs go round. He attempted to transmit images via mechanical scanning discs and cells, pioneering the transmission of moving images, making a huge step towards modern TV. Northern Irish entrepreneur and friend Oliver George Hutchinson became a key partner and investor promoting the project. He wrote press articles predicting it would become as successful as the wireless radio. In 1927, Baird transmitted the first long-distance TV pictures over 438 miles of telephone line between London and Glasgow. In 1928, the Baird Television Development Company achieved the first transatlantic television transmissions. His first transmission was from London to New York, sending mechanical images using a landline from a London transmitter to then shortwave radio across the Atlantic receiver. Now, if you were around 100 years ago, Georges, is that the type of project that you would have got involved with?
Well, I sat there listening to your introduction on that topic, and the simple answer is absolutely, because I love innovation. And it reminded me, I was at the Australian Open yesterday, and it was amazing seeing these
Okay.
cameras hanging from the ceiling down
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah,
looping
yeah,
around.
yeah.
It's just unbelievable where TV was 100 years ago to where we are now. That is amazing. But the simple answer is absolutely, there's high probability, because I love being a value creator. I love being part of, and again, it goes to the point we make earlier, Nigel. What is a TV? It's just a communication medium, an advertising revenue vehicle. That's what it really is, isn't it? When you think about it. So
Well,
that's
people
that's a great
monetize
topic.
everything.
Yes,
Yep.
correct.
So with that, so if you're around 100 years ago and you're approached by John Logie Baird and his televisor, this would be a commercialization readiness project, I'm guessing. Um,
Yes.
so you'd implement your Pillars of Wealth (POW) framework. So can you give us a bit of background on what led you to develop this framework?
Yeah, look, again, learning curves, raising awareness, moving from being busy to productive, and everything I covered before. One thing I will add before I sort of delve into that is, one thing I also learnt is the word pain. Most
Right.
people think they can avoid pain. You know what I learned, Nigel?
What's
You can never avoid pain. All you can do with pain is experience it. You're either
uh-huh.
going to experience the pain of discipline or the
Mm-hmm.
pain of regret. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
Right? So I guarantee 100 years ago, there would have been people that may have come across that opportunity and hesitated. Or, oh, they were too fear driven. And guarantee 5, 10, 20, 30 years later, they would have seen what would have happened and thought, oh, and that hasn't changed. There are people experiencing the pain and regret today because they didn't do something 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago. And in 5, 20, 30 years' time from now, there'll people be experiencing the pain of regret. Peak performers experience what I call the pain of discipline, the pain of
Right.
now. Okay.
Yep.
So when I look at my pillars of wealth system, it's because over the last 3 decades, I spent, as you alluded to earlier, Nigel, full time investor, entrepreneur in property, healthcare, cybersecurity, innovative technologies, capital engagement. And over that time, I kept seeing similar patterns. Was a few succeeded and most didn't. Does that make sense? Good ideas kept failing, not because they were bad, but because the same risks were being ignored over and over again. I realized early on that wealth doesn't come from ideas. It comes from systems, discipline, and execution. Does that make sense? So I
Mm-hmm. Yep.
started
Yep.
formalizing the filters that I was already using before committing capital, time, or reputation. Okay. So I created what I call my 5 pillars of wealth. Is it okay if I go through them with the audience, Nigel?
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
before you do that, so essentially, this evolved from what you were doing as an investor,
Yeah,
assessing
I started
opportunities.
originally as an angel investor. I thought I would leverage, my massive cash flow in my business. Because
Yep,
fundamentally, people, there's some people arguing business is better than property or property is better than shares. And as you know, we're not giving any advice. This is just general information, general
yep,
data sharing, general education. Yeah. This is what
yep,
I've learned. The wealthy don't get caught up in opinions. They get caught up in results. They get caught
yep.
up in monetization, commercialization, or leverage. Yeah. What I've learned about the wealthy is they tend to have one or two major asset classes that creates huge cash flow, then they invest in other asset classes. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yep.
Whereas the
Yep.
masses tend to have a major asset class, which is a job, and we know what job stands for, don't we? Just over broke, right? The
Yep.
challenge with that pillar, if that pillar collapses, so does their revenue. So what
Right.
I
Okay.
realized in the early days, business cash flow allowed me to invest in different asset classes, but also invest in pending big growth opportunities. And I went from
Hmm.
being an angel investor and saw the mistakes people were making around me to then started becoming a very active leveraged
Okay.
investor. Does that make
Okay. So
sense?
that makes sense. So that's the foundation of the pillars of wealth. So yeah,
Mhm.
why don't you take us through that?
So pillars of wealth, as we mentioned, is commercial readiness test. It's again, I want to emphasize, ideas don't create wealth, systems do. Okay.
Yep.
It's
Hmm.
important to understand why most ideas fail. They fail because there's no real market. So the first thing I look for, is there an existing market? It's very, very important because if you've got to go and create the market, it's this is too much effort with very,
Yep.
very small possible success. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay. Okay. So step one, is there an established market that you can be tapped into?
Correct. So existing market is money. Why? Because it means somebody else has already gone and spent the dollars. They've done the testing, they've done the research, they've now proven the market exists. There's
And
no
they've
existing.
educated consumers.
Correct. You're not actually building a business. You're actually running an experiment. That's where most people
Okay.
go wrong. They fall in love with novelty instead of demand. Demand is inspiration. Once you
Yeah.
identify the market, the next step we look at is, okay, have you identified a problem in that market?
Right.
Very
Okay. Yep.
important. The market, existing markets, one. Number two, have you identified a problem in that market? Okay. Markets don't create wealth, by the way. You know what creates wealth? Problems do. Okay. So
Okay.
you got to
Yep.
identify a problem in that market. Okay. The
Hmm.
question here is, what pain exists? How painful is it? How often is that occurring? If the problem isn't obvious, recurring, and painful, customers won't move. And if customers don't move, revenue doesn't move either. So now we've
Okay.
gone from one, two to three. What's three? And you
Yep.
now provide a better solution.
Right. Okay. So no good having a problem without a solution.
Correct. So you've identified the problem. However, you've got to come up with a better solution because if you're just going to go reinvent the wheel, the market already exists. Somebody's already got or there might be multiple major market share owners already. So you've got to create a better solution to be able to capture that market. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
better doesn't mean perfect. It means meaningful, better in a way the customer actually cares about. You know, Steve Jobs says, get it done before you get it perfect. That's a mistake a lot of people make. Okay.
Yep.
Can you do it faster, safer, simpler, more accurate, easy to execute, easy to implement? There's no clear reason for the customer to switch. You're competing on hope, and hope is not a strategy. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So on that, so better could mean a number of things, and in different markets, something being better in one way may be great, but in another market, no one cares about it. How would you assess what is meaningfully better?
If I go through let me finish the next three, pillars,
Okay.
and then I'll give a real life example where I've
Okay. Great.
implemented this whole process in a real life example, and we're actually heading towards an IPO in the next 12 to 18 months. I'll come back to that if you let me.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
So just to recap, we've got the established market, we've got pain, and we've got a solution at the moment.
Correct. Well done. Fantastic.
Okay.
I love that. So
What's
pillar.
next?
So great, great. So I get a lot of phone calls on a regular basis on this, Nigel, and I just can quickly do a test over the phone very quickly on my head. Right.
Hmm.
Most people think they can tick the first three pillars.
Yep.
Where most people fail is pillar 4 and 5, okay?
Right.
Or I'll
Okay.
send them a challenge, I'll give them some feedback and come back to me in 3 months' time or 6 months' time, and I'll take you through my score system soon. But pillar 4 is what I call the human resources, okay?
Hmm.
So, the team involved, so critical. Ideas don't execute, people execute. People, even in this technology savvy world we're living in, people still think they can discount people. You will never discount people, right? So
Yeah.
people are still a key ingredient in the success process because they've got to execute. So I look at leadership, operational capability, who actually carries the pressure when things don't go to plan. Most failures I've seen weren't idea failures; they were execution failures. Does that make sense?
Right. Okay.
And
Yep.
e-
Yep.
and ego, and ego. A lot of projects that I had invested in my early days, Nigel, that were going nowhere. The common link I found is people lacked the skills and the execution. They were the wrong
Yeah.
people in the wrong roles.
Yeah. Well, I've found in just in my experience, people invest in people.
Correct.
You can, have great ideas, but if you don't have people to execute them and people that are going to be accountable, it's not worth it.
Yep. Yep. And the last pillar is financial resources. Okay.
Hmm.
So we identified that there's an existing market. We identify the pain factor in the market. There's a problem. We identify that we can provide a better solution, right? We're now identifying who are the people involved and then so human resources, we've ticked that box, and box 5 is financial resources. Okay. Why?
Yep.
Because cash flow is oxygen. Without it, everything else stops. The question is whether there's enough runway to reach the next value inflection point without panic decisions. Many ideas die not because they were wrong, but because they ran out of oxygen too early. Does that make sense? So
Yep. Yep.
understanding financial resources, as opposed to capital injection, as opposed to how do you make that win-win consistently and having a plan for an exit, right? Stephen
Right.
Covey in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, his first chapter talks about you do an exit on your life. And there's a challenging chapter. He actually says to you, even write, how will your funeral look? Who will come to your funeral? You know, who's going to be there? Who's going to, it's challenging, right? But you take that analogy into your businesses, you got to, now it doesn't mean you're grounded to that exit, but if you don't have an exit, you don't stake things in your favor. Does that make sense?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
So are they? How do they come together?
So I have a scoring and discipline a focus, right?
Hmm.
So
Yep.
I give each pillar a score 1 to 5. So I'll give you a real life example in a second, but 1 to 5, right? So obviously the higher score, the better. It's not golf, it's not the
Yep.
opposite. It's more
Yep.
basketball, baseball, cricket, right? Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Or football, soccer. The higher the score, the better. So anything above 22 out of 25 is commercially ready.
Hmm.
Amber means they've got to restructure, and red means that they have to stop. Okay. So
Okay.
I'll
So
give you,
just on that, are there weightings, or are they all completely a 5 is a 5 regardless which pillar it's in?
yeah. So each pillar gets a rating of 1 to 5.
Right. So one pillar isn't more important to another. They're all of equal importance.
Now they're all equally important, but obviously
Right.
they're sequential. They're sequential.
Yeah.
Because you could have a great team, but if you haven't identified the market, well, what do you got? You could have a great
No.
team, but if you haven't identified a better solution, what do you got? Make sense?
Right.
So
Yep. Yep. Yep.
22 to
Okay.
25 is proceed. 18 to 21 might need an assessment, a restructure. 14 to 17 is what I call high risk, and less than 14, not now. That
Yep.
doesn't mean they
Okay.
might want to go away 6 months, 12 months, but that's the process. Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'll give you a real life example. Right?
Yep.
Let's have a look at a market. I'll ask the audience this question. Is there a market, or is our population getting older?
Yes.
There's a growing grey market, isn't there? Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
In that population, we identified, and not just that population, but across the board, we identified 1 in 25 people have an issue in swallowing medications.
Really? 1 in
Why?
25?
1 in 25 people, dysphagia, could be, Parkinson's, you know, car accidents, issues with the esophagus. Some people, there's a huge marketplace of people that are chew fed, cannot swallow for whatever reason. Okay, some
So,
could be short
so, so
term.
it's not age dependent. It could be
No, it's
across
not
all
age
age groups.
dependent either. Obviously, the older, that 1 in 25 bracket is growing in the older
Hmm.
market, but it's not age dependent. Well, I've seen kids as young as 8 years old who are chew fed, 9 years old who are chew fed, cannot swallow, cannot do what you and I, in most cases, what people take for granted every day. So we
Yep.
identified a market that needs medications. That's the first thing we identified. In that
Hmm.
same market, we identified there's a challenge with them being able to swallow those medications because a high percentage of medications are made in tablet form because there's a
Yep.
cheaper way to manufacture. Okay.
Okay.
I've
Okay.
seen data, I've seen reports where some medications in liquid form could be 10 to 100 times more costly to produce. Okay. So
Really?
the market we identified is a market that people struggle to swallow medications. So by the way, when I talk about people, there's another division we've now launched, an animal side, because animals cannot swallow
Oh,
medications.
okay.
That's
Okay.
another huge market, right? So
Yep.
so keep that in mind as I take you through this process. So I'm involved. I'm the CEO of a company called Life Assist Technologies.
Hmm.
That company owns 100% of a company called MedAssist, which is a human side, and VetAssist, which is the animal side.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So taking you through my POW system, pillars of wealth, POW, right? Let's
Yeah.
have a go. Okay, let's do a Rocky, right? Uh, the first thing we identified, is there a market? So we give that a 5. Absolutely. Bang. Thank you very
Yep.
much.
Tick
Okay.
that off. Yep.
Next thing we identified, is there a problem in their market? Massive, massive.
Absolutely.
So, you know, we met a guy, phenomenal testimonial. He used to take his 3 to 5 tablets in the morning with coffee,
Hmm.
but wouldn't take them in the evening because he couldn't swallow. And the reason being is crushing was very cumbersome, very
Hmm.
antiquated. We had a university did a trial where they showed crushing your tablets could lose up to 50% of the medication. Unbelievable. Okay. There's
50%.
safety issues. Yeah, 50%. And we got the report. Also, there could be safety issues. I could be crushing tablets for you, Nigel, and I
Yep.
could risk breathing that in. It could affect my health. Okay.
Right. Yep.
So now there's some medications that you're not allowed to crush because they're getting coated, they're slow release. You're supposed to get them into your gut and it's supposed to slowly release the medication. Right?
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's issues with that. So this gentleman had an issue with swallowing. His pharmacist got involved with us. Phenomenal. He's tested over 100 plus medications, nutraceuticals, and compared it to crushing as opposed to using our solution and said, "Oh, I've
Wow.
got the ideal client." So rings him up, says, "Come in here. I want to show you this unit. It's amazing. You don't have to worry about crushing, hurting your wrist, wasting your medication, all of this stuff." He says, "Here you go. Oh, it's terra coated. Let's call your doctor." So they called the doctor and said, "Can you give us a supplementary medication that's crushable?" Unbeknownst to us and the pharmacist, 3 months later, he takes our unit, our solution, and flies to Europe for a holiday. Hadn't been away for years.
Oh, wow.
So in his words, we've actually saved his life. Phenomenal. So again, let me go through this process because I'll sort of jump ahead with this exciting story.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
is there existing market? Two, is there a problem in that market? Absolutely, both human and animals. Three, can
Yep.
we provide a better solution? Yes, because we don't have the risk of losing 50% of the medication. In actual fact, the university said we deliver 98% plus of the medication.
Yep. Well, yep. Sorry, I was going to say, what is that solution? What is that?
So we
That
have we have a solution where we will liquefy the medications instead through ultrasonic
right.
technology, right?
Yep.
We liquefy. We have our unit, we have our beaker, which is a consumable income. So you got to use the beaker in our unit to be able to work. And
Hmm.
also, I'm not sure if you've tasted any medications recently, Nigel, but a lot of medications are very bitter. So we have masking flavors for the
Oh.
bitterness. Yeah,
Oh.
huge.
Okay. Yeah.
So we have tangy orange, salted caramel, smooth chocolate. We're getting great feedback. Brilliant, right? So let's go back to do we tick the first 3 boxes? 100%.
Yep.
Then box 4 and 5 is human resources capital, financial resources. So the first 3
Hmm.
I will give 5 out of 5. So I'm already at 15 out of 25.
Yep.
Yeah. The next one, we've now got an established board, right? 100 years of combined business success experience. We got advisory board. We got the pharmacist on board, as I mentioned. We got professional vets on the animal side on board. So based on our assessment, we tick number 4, human resources. I would
Yep.
give I would give 3 out of 5 for capital because now we're going on an exciting capital engagement roadshow. Yeah. So we've taken the business to the point now where we've got both sides traction. We got resellers involved. We've got national distribution partners involved. We've got some trials happening in North America, in Asia, in Australia. In actual fact, one of the smartest things we did, and I'd love to share this gift, as we were
Yeah.
getting NDIS accredited, we're getting all our trademarks ticked off, we're getting our electrical certifications ticked off. We did a soft launch where we gave out our technology, our units, to a select few people as a value add.
Right.
Condition that we got some feedback, good,
Yep.
bad,
Yep.
ugly, different, whatever. The feedback's been phenomenal. Some of the testimonials that we've been able to get from those, well, one of them led us to a veterinary group here in Melbourne, and they're compound pharmacists. So we didn't understand that these people compounding every day, right? They took
Yep.
our liquefying unit and tested some of the medications that they were compounding. And in their words, we were able to reduce about 50% of their labor time in their business.
Oh, wow.
Huge, massive. Plus, we're able to save some of their on their raw materials. Because when you're compounding, you tend to be guesstimating 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, 30 days out. Make sense?
Yep. Yep.
Here, because they can liquefy on demand, they changed their model. They loved our technology so much. A few months later, reached out to us. We caught up with them and we showed them our business plan on the animal side. Obviously, they were interested on the human side, but they thought, hey, we're vets, we're involved more exotic avian bird side, and I didn't realize there's over 600 species of bird that they, have to medicate on a regular basis. Can you believe
Really?
people spend thousands of dollars on birds, exotic birds? I found in
Wow.
some cases they're in families for 30, 40, 50, 80 years. Crazy. So, Nigel, when we did, see, this is what's exciting. There's three truths. We know what
Yep.
we know what we don't know. However,
Yep.
we don't know what we don't know. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I
Yep.
didn't know that people spend thousands of dollars on exotic birds. I
No.
didn't know that exotic birds, reptiles, guinea pigs, rabbits, global huge industry. I didn't know that the projections are the crushing industry is going to hit 1.2 billion US, right?
God.
It's just crazy. So when we did our business plan on the animal side, we thought cats, dogs, horses, cattle. They said, as big as you think that potential market is, exotic birds, reptiles, guinea pigs, rabbits, makes that pale into insignificance. They ended up
Wow.
investing in our company at an $8 million valuation at the time we had no revenues.
Wow.
That gave us massive confidence that we're on an
Yeah.
exciting path. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
the meantime,
Absolutely.
we've got trademarks for both Life Assist, Med Assist, Vet Assist, both locally, nationally. You know, we've got now national reseller distribution agreements in place. We're talking to groups overseas. We're presenting to an audience of hundreds of thousands of people next month in Sydney, high net worth investors and family offices. We're really excited. In 28 years, Nigel, well, to be brutally honest, I never thought I would get involved in being actively involved in these, but I designed my system,
Yeah.
which got me engaged. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
More and
Yeah.
more, you
Absolutely.
know? So I give
Absolutely.
my score on my, you know, pillars of wealth, 23 out of 25. The missing 2 now is
Yeah.
hitting our financial targets. So we're on track to achieve that over the next 6 to 12 months. I
Oh,
hope that,
fantastic.
clarifies, some value there for the audience,
Uh,
Nigel, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. And what we'll do, we'll put the details of the websites, if you like, on the bottom of this video as well, so people can go there and have a look.
Sure. Sure, happy to.
Yeah.
Look, because I travel a lot, I just tend to give out my because I'm on the board of 5 different companies and so on, I
Yeah.
tend to just give out my Gmail address. So if anybody wants to engage, wants to get more information, I'm happy to share my direct Gmail address, if that's okay, Nigel?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And
Georgios Mihos at gmail.com, and if you wanna add that on there.
sorry, repeat that again, Georges.
So Georgios Mihos at gmail.com. So it's Georgios, Georgios Mihos, Mihos at gmail.com, or Gorgeous Georges, whatever you want, Nigel. I appreciate that.
And we'll put that on the links to the in the podcast as well. So
And, I- and
it'll
and
be
I'm
linked.
happy to email anybody, my template for them to use and assist in their own business. Happy to give that as a gift because of being invited on behalf of the Private Lane Group, and I appreciate the time, Nigel. Thank you.
Yeah, no problems at all, Georges. And look, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. You've really uncovered some pearls of wisdom there, and I love w- going right back earlier. You were talking about the non-verbal and verbal being congruent to move together, to move ahead, and then quality of life will be determined by the quality of the questions you ask yourself. I mean, That's some really great stuff. And then your Sunday night plans. I'd never thought of that. As you've mentioned, you fill a number of we all fill a number of different roles. Well, take those roles seriously. Plan out what you want to achieve. 5 outcomes, I think you said, for each of your roles, what you want to achieve that week. So look, it's been an absolute pleasure on there. I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed it. So thank you once again, Georges.
Finish off on this. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And that's so true.
There we go. There we go. I ran a business planning business for a number of years, and yes, I use that a fair bit as well. So that's it for today's episode of The Priority Lane. Make sure you tune in next week for the next edition. Thank you.
This episode is sponsored by My Brokers app, a white label app built specifically for financial advisors and wealth management professionals. If you want to know how you can have your own app exclusively for your business and your clients up and running by this time next week, visit mybrokers.app or download the free My Brokers demo app from your favorite app store.